Welcome all to today's session. Uh, so today we will be going through the second service of a EC2, which we call a building block of a AWS services, which is a EC2, which is a elastic compute service. Okay, so this is like today's agenda, which we will go through. Hopefully we will be able to cover all the topics. So we will cover what is EC2, what are the security groups, what are the how to create a EC2 instance, how to connect to an EC2 instance, how we can suspend terminate EC2 instance, how we can set up a CloudWatch, how can we set up a auto scaling, load balancing, how to perform health check for your EC2 instances, and at the last, EC2 placement groups. Okay, so as everybody is aware, EC2 is nothing but a elastic compute cloud. If you go by just a terminology, so it's if we just compare it with the generic terminology, so it is a virtual machine available on a cloud which can be connected via internet. So in simple language, it is just a virtual machine where you can just run your program, or you can just connect and perform all the operations which you can do on a virtual machines available at maybe at your local network, or if you just create a virtual machine in your machine using a Oracle VirtualBox or similar kind of a hypervisor. Okay, so if we just go by a definition, so Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud, which they also call EC2, provides a capability provides a scalable computing capacity in the Amazon Web Service Cloud. Using a EC2 eliminates your need to invest in a hardware upfront, so that you can develop and deploy application faster. You can use EC2 launch as many as few virtual machines, or few virtual machines as you need, configure security, networking, manage storage, etc., etc. So if just to give a high level view, so basically, in traditional way, if you have to set up a virtual machine, or even you need some compute resource, so what you need to have a hardware where you need to install operating system, you need to set up your all the networking requirement, firewall and everything, and then you can use it. So you need to pay the upfront cost of the hardware, probably OS, networking, antivirus, so those kind of things you have to manage before you can start working on that virtual machine. Okay, but and also if you need to increase the size, or if you need to have another instance, what you need, you again need to go back and buy more hardware. So AWS, what it has solved this problem. So what you can just create as many as virtual machines as you need, based upon few configurations, and you can also configure so that your EC2 instances, or number of EC2 servers which are running, can scale up or scale down based upon the traffic, or whatever, based upon other algorithms also. Okay, so this is the advantage. So we will cover each and every aspects of EC2. Okay, so these are some of the terminologies or features. So first one is it provides you a virtual computing environment. So AWS calls them EC2 instances. There are pre-configured templates for your instance, which they call it as Amazon Machine Image, AMIs, that packages the some of the pre-configured softwares in some cases. Right? So if you want to run a Tomcat server, for example, so you will get a AMI image which will already have a that required software. So but I'm just giving you a very simplest example, but there are AMIs which contains all pre required softwares. So we will explore these AMIs and see how it looks and how we can utilize these AMIs. Okay, then next part is like you have a various configuration available based upon number of CPU cores, memory, storage, network capabilities. So that you can also choose. So these are known as an instance type. Okay, then AWS also provides you a secure login information for your instances using a key pair, which is nothing but a public and private key. And right, so that is how you can secure your access to your instances. Then there are different types of storage volumes which are available. These can be a temporary or these can be a persistent. So we will explore these things. So and then you also have a EBS volumes, which is nothing but elastic block storage, where you can basically persist your data, or your basically you can store your data that will remain there even if you delete your instance. So then there are many other functionalities. We will cover most of these one by one. So for example, multiple physical locations, you can also just like we discussed last time. So we have a concept of region and availability zones. So we can utilize that for storing our data in a multiple physical locations. Then you can create a security group. So you can just assume security group as a firewall. So you can just mention which IP ports you want to enable. Then you can have a static IP address configured to your instance, which they call it elastic IP address. And what else? Then you can just set up a private network using a virtual private cloud service. So this is high level functionalities or features of the EC2 service. Okay, so now we will explore each and every functionality of EC2 service. So hopefully you would be able to correlate with how generally you get a virtual machine, or even how you configure your operating system on your machine. Okay, please ping me, or stop me, or message me whenever there is a query. So let's make this session more interactive rather than I'm just speaking all the time. Okay. Okay, so before going to this one, so I would like to show you along with the theoretical part, we will do the practical part also. Okay. Let me see if I am sharing my okay, it is already shared. So okay, so let's log into the AWS account, and then from there I will just do the hands-on, and then we can using a root. So I hope every one of you already have got the account created. So in case if you are facing any issue, please let me know, or just put it on a Slack channel. Okay, so this is how I hope my screen is visible. Okay, can you see this browser screen with the AWS? Maybe somebody can volunteer and help me to like whatever I'm saying is visible on screen.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. That is great. Okay. So this is like EC2 dashboard. So I hope you already know how to reach to this EC2 dashboard. So you can just go to the compute and just go to the EC2 instance. So now if I will just show you, I will just scroll you through this whole menu, so which will also help you. So what are the things like you have a instances. So this is the basically your screen where you can find what are your services or EC2 instances running. You can control those things like you can just stop, start, or reboot or terminate a particular EC2 instance. EC2 instance just a VM. Okay, so and you can also do other operations based upon what you want. For example, you can connect, you can change the settings of your instances, correct? And then this is a this is from here you can just start creating your instances. Okay, so this is the how major of the functionalities are available here. So if you just want you can just go for and search for instance type. Then there are other things like let's come back after this slide, then we can explore. Okay, so what happens EC2 has a very good security implementations already available. So they have already implemented lot of security stuff. So they provide security at a 3 level, or basically at a 2 level. So one is the in form of a security groups. So security groups are nothing but these are the firewalls which can prevent or which can help you to configure which traffic can reach to your instance. Like for example, which IP address, which ports are opened on that particular instance. So it is just similar to the firewalls which you have on your machines. So this security group acts as a software based firewall. Okay, then you have a next level of security, which is a network access control list and network ACL. Okay, so this helps you to define similar kind of rules at a network level. So basically, if you just create a subnet here, if you see we have a subnet 1 and subnet 2. So we can also define security rules at a network level. So it might be possible you allow for example HTTPS and SSH protocols on a network access control list, but on this particular instance you are running only a HTTP server, for example. So in that case you can just disable SSH on this particular security group, and so that way you can have a multiple 2 level hierarchy of security for a particular instance. Okay, so this is a very simplified thing, and it is actually a very simple configuration. So most of the AWS things are very simple, just clicking certain buttons and filling some details, that's all. Otherwise, if you have to do the same thing in your machine, then it is very tricky and very complex. Okay, so as we just discussed, the security groups allows you to specify firewalling rules for your instances. These rules are independent of and is in addition to the software firewall provided by instance operating system. So in many of the AMIs or images available from the AWS, you might be having some firewalls which are already inbuilt as a part of instance. Okay, so in that case these are the on the top extra rules or forwarding rules, or we can say it is an additional layer of a firewall available to the for a security purpose. So in some of the AMIs which we will be using, so there you might not have a software level firewall already enabled. So it could be enabled or it could be disabled. So basically, so it gives you another level of control. So via the use of security groups, the access to the instances can be controlled. Okay. It must be defined before creating an instance, or it can also be created during an instance. So it's just a matter of how you create an instance. So security groups can be added to instance at a creation time. These rules can be modified during runtime. So even if you already have an instance, so you can on the go you can just open a security control group and modify the rules, and these rules will be applied on the go. Okay, so that is like how it works. So let's create a security group, and then probably you will be able to correlate it with your requirement. Okay, so this we have a different subgroups here. One is related to the instance configuration, then another is the images, then you have a elastic block storage, which is a persistent volume, then you have a networking, and you have a load balancing, and then auto scaling. So this comes as a part of your network and security. Okay, so I already have some groups, but let's create a group. So but before going into there, there is already a default uh, security group which is by default there. So if you see here, so as soon as you create an account, this rule will be there. So this rule says like all inbound traffic is allowed on all the ports and protocols, and okay, let's leave it. So I think there is some this rule is there, so we don't have to do anything, but let's create a new rule, then I will tell you what I need to say. So here if I just create, say for example, my database security group. Okay, so just write just give a small description, let's say this one, and VPC we will come later, but just for information, VPC is nothing but a subgroup which you can create inside the AWS cloud. Okay, so it is default. So now if I just do nothing and just create a security group and just open it, then you will see by default security is there, and it is a part of a AWS policy, so that you have a least access policy implemented at a AWS site. So that what it does mean, like whenever you create a service, whenever you create some configuration, it would be created keeping the rule in mind, like you will have a least access uh, provided to that particular service. So if we just see here, so you don't have any default inbound rule. So any traffic, if you apply this security group to a virtual machine or EC2 instance, you don't have an inbound rule defined. So there would be no traffic which can this particular instance can receive. Okay, so this is how AWS implements the least privilege or least security, least access policy basically. Okay, but if you see here, from you have all outbound rules enabled. So if I just create an instance and apply this rule, what will happen, this VM can access everything. Okay, but nobody can access this VM. So you understand this thing. So the outbound rules are defined so that you can upgrade the operating system, you can do the patching work, or you can do those kind of security related upgrades. So for those kind of activities, these outbound rules are enabled. It is assumed whatever VM we are creating, whosoever is using that VM, that is a trusted user, and that has a that user has been authenticated, so he can just download anything or access anything from inside that particular virtual machine. Okay, but this virtual machine is not exposed outside for any access. Okay, so this is what the security rules, default security rules are there. Once you create a default security group, it inherits these security rules. Okay, then obviously, like, you can just enable these security rules. You can add a security rule. So here you can just tell there are predefined rules or, like, protocols mapping already available for some of the known protocols. So if I just say, like, I just want to use it for HTTP. Okay, so by default this information would be filled: what is a protocol, what is a port range, and then, like, in some of the cases it might be possible, like, you have a virtual machine which needs to be accessed from your organization's network. Okay, or from a particular particular machine which is, like, kind of a gateway in your organization. So in that way, like, you can just provide a custom IP address, or you can provide a complete CIDR block, or basically a network information. Okay, or you can just mention it can be accessed from anywhere. So it would be just choose that 0.0.0/0. That means it can be accessed from any of the IP address and any of the port. Then you can just write, like, HTTP port, and you can just add a rule. Okay, for SSH protocol is already there, but you can also use a custom rule. Okay, so for example, custom protocol, let's say protocol TCP, and okay, so in this way, or let's say, like, or in some of the cases it might be possible, like, you want to expose that particular virtual machine for all the traffics, but generally from security perspective this is not good. So let's enable SSH, so that as soon as this virtual machine is created, we are able to log in. So let's say access is anywhere, and let's say it is a or a HTTPS rule. Okay, add rule and save the rules. Okay, so this is extra one. So if I just come here, so it has created basically there are 2 rules, but here you see in a 4 rules, because one rule is for this source, and this is for though they are same, but it is just way of how to visualize the things. Okay, so I hope this is okay. You are able to understand this part. Okay, now let's come to the next topic, which is how to create a EC2 instance. Okay, so how we created a security group, it is there. So these slides just keep on changing. So basically some of the GUI elements keep on just changing. For example, the outbound and inbound rules, they might change. So you might see details, some of the things which might not look very same, or but things are almost similar. Okay, so no default restriction on outbound traffic. So by default you can put that restriction also. You can configure the outbound rules also. You can just mention, like, only to this network I can allow outbound traffic, so that thing also possible. Okay, however, no inbound traffic is allowed by default. This is what we have already seen. Okay, now next question is before, like, we are just trying to correlate the things, or just trying to collect the things which are required for creating a virtual machine or AWS EC2 instance. Okay, so first part is the firewall rules, which we covered as a part of a security group. Next is the image. correct? So if we have to install OS on our machine, what we need a ISO image, correct, as a part of a disk or a USB drive or like some bootable drive. So same is required here. So here that ISO image is known as a AMI. So it is not exactly ISO, but you can just visualize it or like correlate as a ISO image. So AMI provides the information required to launch an instance, and AMI is a virtual machine image with a given operating system and bunch of application bundled together. So if we see, so there are two types of AMIs. One is the standard default operating systems, which are there, like SUSE Linux is there, Amazon Linux is there, Red Hat is there, and there are another set of custom AMIs. So these custom AMIs are nothing but like somebody has already installed a AMI. They installed some some other softwares on the top of that. They made some changes, and they might have published them as a custom AMIs. So we will see like how we can create a AMI. If do some changes, we can also publish those changed AMIs as a custom AMIs. Okay. So Amazon provides hundreds of public AMIs with many operating systems and pre-installed applications. We can create our own AMIs depending upon the need of our application and environments. So if we just assume like we have a what you can say web application, and we want to create a auto scaling group, like for example, we just want to create a virtual machine, and we configure rule in such a way like we can just replicate same image multiple times, so same running software multiple times based upon the need. So for that, what we have to do, we have to create our own AMI, publish it as a custom AMI, and configure our rules so that whenever a new instance is created, it picks that particular custom AMI. Okay. So this is how it looks like. You have a complete life cycle. You can create a AMI template for the you can just create a AMI. You can get it registered. You can like if you don't need, you can just deregister it. You can launch it, or you can copy it as another AMI. So this is the overall life cycle of a AMI. So now let's go and see the AMI part. So AMI, you have a separate sections. Okay. So if you just go and see, you have a filters here which you can just see. So there are almost more than 500 AMIs with open source and commercial softwares. Okay, and you also have a EC2 builder, image builder. So let's go with this option. Oh, sorry. So you can also do the search, but okay, you can just search here. So you will it will by default show the AMIs which are owned by me or which I created, or you can also search a public AMI. So if I just go and show you, so these are all public AMIs, but somehow this view is not good. Okay, we will see the different view. Somehow this view is not good. It is not giving that information. Okay, let me start it from here, so it would be probably better. So this is the better way, which gives you what kind of AMIs are available. So for our purpose, from community perspective, we can select this option. So it will only show us the AMIs which are basically covered under the free tier options. So for example, Amazon Linux is there, Red Hat Linux 8 is there, SUSE Linux is there, Ubuntu is there, and Microsoft Windows Server 2019 base is there. So you can also use it for your testing. Okay, so there are multiple versions of software which are available for free tier, but if you just go and search the community AMI, so these are the AMIs which are published by the different community members. Okay, so for example, I will just show you one AMI which has pre-installed tools. For example, this one, if I just show you, so this is the Windows Server 2016 AMI, basically with the 2016 server, and it also has a deep learning packages pre-installed. So you can just see here what are the different packages available. So it has a TensorFlow, Cafe, MXNet. Correct. So all these packages, softwares are already pre-installed on this or pre-packaged as a part of this AMI. So similarly, like if you have a specific requirement, you can just go through these list and you can just find that particular AMI which suits your requirement. So then there are other filters which you can also choose, like if you have a specific requirement of a particular flavor of a operating system, particular architecture, if you just want, so those kind of things you can just specify or mention here. So there is also a AWS marketplace where which lists some featured softwares which are pre-built in a particular AMI, so you can also choose it. So for example, this Trend Micro is antivirus plus other things are also pre-built. Or for example, this OpenVPN. So if you want to have a OpenVPN installed for your infrastructure, so you can just use this particular AMI, and it will already have a OpenVPN with basic configuration. So those things you can choose, but you have to make sure it fits your budget. So you will have costs associated with these kind of a pre-built packages in most of the cases. So you have to be little careful about the price. Okay. So this is how AMIs look. Okay, then you have a different type of EC2 instances available. So I have just tried to capture some of the types at a very high level. So if you see here, we have a general purpose instance type. So instance types are nothing but it is a combination of a CPU, memory and hard disk which you can choose while creating a AWS instance. So if we see here, so we have a different types of a categorization. So one is a general purpose, like if you just want to have a web server or that kind of a particular kind of a software or general purpose software, you can choose an instance type which is a general purpose. But if your application is a compute hungry application and you want to do a lot of compute, in that case you can just go with this C category of this one. Okay, so we will see how these different. Then you have some memory specific applications, like if you want to install some in memory database kind of a thing, then you should go with these kind of instances. And if you want some storage optimized, where you have a faster storage requirement, you want to transfer a lot of data between your processing and your storage devices, so you can go for a storage optimized device. Then you have accelerated computing. Okay, so now let's see how we can see it here. So if you just go and see here instance type, so you will see there are a lot of instances available here. Okay, so you can just go and just see what are the functionalities and what are the capabilities here. So if we just go and see the table here, so C is a compute optimized. So if you just go and see here, so you will you have higher number of cores, and probably the configuration would be you see here. So you can just see how does it different from others. So you might be having more cores or more threads per core, or the CPU speed might be more than uh, other type of instances. Okay. So based upon your requirement, you can choose with your type. Okay. So this is how it works. So you need to choose the type based upon your need. So each type has a different per hour charges based upon what type of resources you are using. So but in most of the cases, general purpose instance should be sufficient to take care of your need. And even for free tier, you also have a general purpose server available. Okay. So now we will try to create one EC2 instance. Okay. So now coming back to the EC2 dashboard, or just go to the instances, launch instance, choose only the free tier which is available to us. I would go with the Ubuntu. Okay. You can choose any other. Okay. Okay, so there's a question: how are we going to have a look at creating AWS feature using Python? Okay, are we going? Okay, so in going forward, we have a session on a Terraform where you will see how we can create a AWS instance and other things using a Terraform scripts. So that you can have a infrastructure as a code, but not as a Python, but somehow you will get a hint how using a code this can be done. Okay, so if you see here, when we okay, just going back, so this is the first step. So if you see, there are 7 steps for creating a AWS instance. So first step is to choose a correct AMI. Okay, so I chose this Ubuntu. Okay, so if you see here, when you are selecting the instance type, so there are a lot of types of instances available. Okay, so depending upon your need, you can choose whether you want more cores or more RAM. So that kind of a functionality is here. So if you, for example, if you want, you can go for a more RAM, 30 GB RAM, 60 GB RAM, or probably 192 GB of RAM with 96 cores if you have that kind of application. But for a free tier, we only have this T2 micro, so which is basically one virtual core, 1 GB of RAM. Okay, and correct. So here the network performance is low to moderate. But if you want to go for a network extensive applications, you can go for your based upon your requirements, up to 5 gigabytes. You can just go with this particular node, or basically you just go and explore the instance type more. Okay, now next type is the configure the instances. Okay, so some of the things we will discuss little later, but here number of instances you can define, you can just mention. If you want to have a auto scaling group, then you can go for more, but for simplicity, let's go with the default options. So if you just go click this I, so this will also give you a on runtime help or small tooltip which can help to identify what this particular field means. Okay, so most of the things are we will keep them default, but just going forward to tell you this is the default virtual subnet which is created on AWS for your account. Okay, if you want to create a new virtual or new subgroup, you can create a new VPC. If you just want to create a separate subnet and put your instances in that subnet. Okay, but we will go with the default. Then you can choose a subnet, you in my account, since I am using a Mumbai region. So in this particular region, we have a 3 what you can say availability zones. So I can choose any of these specific availability zone if I want. Otherwise, AWS will choose and put my instance in any of these three instances. Okay. Then there is a group concept of a placement group, which gives a higher network throughput, since wherever you create a instances, they will be connected via optical fiber or high speed network connectivity. Okay, so you can do that also. Then there is a capacity reservation. So if you want to reserve this particular instance in a availability zone, correct, so that can also be chosen, but let's keep it default. Generally it is not required. So you can also join a particular domain, like if you have a AWS directory, so you can join your instances to a AWS directory also, or some other Active Directory service also, so that you get a single sign-on or centralized logging mechanism for this particular Windows or Linux machine. Okay, so that functionality is also there. So you can also choose a IAM resource if you just want, if you want to access this particular EC2 instance via some other AWS service. So I'm just telling you these things so that probably these might not be related or may not get used, but this will give you how big or how complex things get with the EC2 when you want to go and explore, or you just want to go to the complete depth of this thing. Then how many core counts or threads per core, you can also specify those things. So generally these things are not required, but what is required is if you setting up a auto scaling group, then number of instances you need to define. So these are the number of maximum number of instances which you can define in a auto scaling group. Okay, then this is a very important thing when you want to decrease your cost. So you can request spot instances. So as we just discussed in last session, so spot instances are just you bid for the highest or highest price and you will get a spot instance. But if somebody else bids for a higher price, this instance will be taken away from you and that would be given to somebody else. So some of the processing where processing can be stopped and started from any point, there this is useful. Okay, generally in our case we will go with the default network. Placement group we don't need. This active directory, these functionalities not required. CPU option not required. Okay, then probably this is required. So we can just define a shutdown behavior. So what will happen when a instance is shut down? In general cases, when we shut down our laptop or PC, it stops. Okay, but here we can also mention whenever some instance is shut down, it can also be terminated, but let's keep it stop. Then there are stop hibernate behavior, enable termination protection. Okay, so sometimes what happens by mistake we might click a button and terminate a particular instance. So to prevent such kind of a scenario, so you can select this option. So what will happen, even if you try to terminate a particular instance, it will tell this is already prevented. So you need to edit that instance and you need to deselect this option. So this will prevent your accidental deletion of your instance. Okay, then you can enable the monitoring using a CloudWatch. Okay, if we get a time we will see it. Okay, then you can also specify if you want to run all your EC2 instances on a particular dedicated hardware. Okay, so this will be little costlier. So if I just say select this one, so I will get a dedicated hardware and all my instances will be created on that particular hardware. So this will basically reduce the network traffic and network latency, and things would be more faster. Okay, then file system, you can create a file system also, but for us, we don't need, we will just go with a default file system. Okay, then there are certain things if you want some script to be provided which should be executed when instance starts up, so you can provide that one also. Okay. Okay, so then we will add a storage to this particular instance. Let's for free tier, I think 30 GB or 50 GB. Okay, 30 GB is maximum limit for a free tier. So we will just create an instance with a 10 GB. Okay, then okay, so if see here now, here also we have option of this delete on termination. So as soon as we delete this particular instance, this particular storage will also get deleted. So you can disable this functionality also. Okay, then you can also choose a type of your volume. So SSD, GPA 1, 2, 3, IO extensive, those kind of things you can mention depending upon your need. You can also add a volume, so similar to other functionalities like operating systems, you can also add separate mounts or volumes to your operating system, but we will not do it. Then you can add a tag for easy tracking database, or for example VM type. Okay, so for example we are using it for database, or let's say we are using it web server. Okay, so this will help in uh, listing down or doing a bookkeeping kind of activities for your instances. Okay, here you can mention this tag would be added to your instance volumes or even with your network interfaces. Okay, so now here we have to specify the security group. So what we can do, we can create a new security group from here, or if we already have some existing security group, we can choose that. So for example, let's choose the, okay, we did not, I think, save that security group. So let's create it from here. Okay. Let's name the security group web server security group. Okay, and description, let's default description. Let SSH be enabled. Okay, for admin rules, let's add a HTTP protocol. Okay, you can just mention it it is accessible for all the anywhere. Okay, custom and both things here will have a same thing. So by default, let's do it anywhere. And next step is you can just review whatever options you have selected. Okay, so if you have some things which some options which might not look good from the AWS security perspective, so they will be highlighted here. So since intentionally we opened this AWS this HTTP port, so this will just highlight us, and if you want to take some corrective action, you can take it, otherwise you can just ignore it. So you just review what you have chosen. Okay, instance type and those things, they are available here, and you can just launch a particular instance. Okay, but before launching an instance, how will you access once this instance is created? Okay, for that, all the AWS instances, they can be accessed using a public key and private key and public key pair. So what we can do, then it will ask us to create a new key pair, or if we already have some key pair, we can use that. So let's say create a new key pair. Okay, eDevOps Guru 2021 key pair. Okay, so for example, if you create one instance, if you are just creating another instance, you can use the existing or earlier key pair if it is okay for you. Otherwise, you can always create separate instances for yourself. You know? So let's save it here. Okay. So you will get only one try or one option to download this key, and if you are not able to download, or like if you forget or delete it, then you won't be able to access your virtual machine. Okay. So if you see here, so here this instance is now launching. We can just go and see the status. Okay. You just click it and it will show the details. So if I just show you here, so this is the instance ID. So if you are doing some coding, or like you're trying to launch this using some ID, and want to manage this instance, in that case this instance ID would be used. Okay, this is the public IP address of your EC2 instance. If you want to access this, you should you should use this one. Okay, this is the DNS resolved, the DNS name. Okay, this is the private IP address used internally for communication between the different EC2 instances or different services. Okay. Then you can just scroll and see the other options, like for example your key pair and those kind of things. So if I just go to the dashboard, I see here, so status is running. Okay, so it is, if you see, the status is still initializing. So as soon when it becomes running, then you should be able to access it. So I will just show you how to access it. So before that, we can also name these instances also for our reference, because identifying or name, or identifying using a name becomes easier rather than an instance ID. So it will take some time. So let's come back to the our slide deck. Okay, this is like the first step. You have to choose the AMI, you have to choose the instance type, you have to configure that particular instance, and you have to add a storage and add a tags. Then you have to configure the security group, and then you review it and you launch, or basically you create a key pair and then you can basically check the running instance status. And once everything is okay, or even before actually it goes into that running state, you can still check some of the parameters. Okay. So I think it is still okay. Now if you see here, the instance state is running, and health check status is also up. Okay. Okay, so now let's see the status here. So instance state is running. Okay. Okay. Next step is how to connect to this particular virtual machine. Okay. So AWS provides basically like two ways, or basically three ways. So one way is like you just click choose a particular instance, click to this connect button, and you have a EC2 Instance Connect. Okay, so press this connect button. So AWS, what it does, it gives you a console where you just get logged in, so you can just run, and basically you are now into the this particular instance. So this is the simplest way of accessing if you have a this console access, this GUI access of your AWS account. But what happens if you don't have an access? What we'll do, you can configure the session manager. So that is another way, but most simplest way other than that instant count is a SSH client. So if you have a SSH installed on your machine, so what you can do, you just copy this command. Though you can create your own command and just write an SSH -i and then give the name of your key pair name and then username @ and then IP address of your machine, this virtual machine. But AWS also gives you ready-made uh, command to connect. So let me just show you how we can connect. Let me share my screen. Okay, this one. Hopefully it should be visible. So if I see, I downloaded this key pair here. Okay, and now if I just write a cmd command and paste this command here, so it will just get connected. So I hope you are able to see my this command prompt here. So on a command prompt you would be able to see how we can connect it. So let me share everything. Hopefully you should be able to see it. Okay, so this is how we can connect to the our EC2 instance. Okay, so this is simplest. So again, like most simplest thing for if you have access to GUI is this option, correct? EC2 Instance Connect. And if you don't have it and you only have a private key, in that way this SSH is another option. Okay, so hopefully this is easy to understand. Okay. Then you can also connect using a Putty. So if you are interested, then you can just go through this Putty connect. Otherwise there are other ways to connect which are easy, but this is how you can just configure your Putty. So for Putty you need to convert your private key into .putty file, and then you can connect using a Putty tool. So okay, so then now let's do some operations on that instance which we created, so that what all different options are available. So let's go to the EC2 dashboard. It is not showing running status one, now it is showing. Okay, it took time to refresh. Okay, so if I select this particular option, this particular running server, so what are other things I can do? So let's try. We can stop this instance, we can reboot this instance, we can terminate this instance. If I show you here, we can terminate this option. But if we do it, then what happens? It did not allow us to delete. Why? Because while configuring this EC2 instance, we had chosen like termination. What was that option? Accidental deletion was disabled. Accidental deletion was basically that checkbox was enabled. So it will not allow us to delete until unless we go to that particular instance and disable that particular checkbox. Okay. Reboot, we can always do a reboot, so it should not take much time. So if I just go and refresh it, so see state availability status, we can just check. Okay, so it is already come into this running state, so it just takes a couple of seconds for this particular AMI. But if you have a lot of softwares which takes a lot of time to start up, so probably in that case your instance will take time to come into running state. Okay, so these are the things. Let's select it. What else we can do? Then there are certain actions which we can do. We can do a view details, we can manage an instance state. So like you can just same things which we could do it from there, we can do from here. So main thing is here, what we main options are here. Instance settings we can change, like From here we can also change that termination protection. But basically these are the options which we had configured during the instance configuration. So these things can be configured here. You can manage other configuration. Let me just here you can change a security group, for example. So if you have a security group, you can modify that security group also. Okay, so let's not do it now, but these are the different options. Okay. Okay, so like we were talking about that custom image. So if you have installed something on this particular VM and you want to store that particular as a template or as a image, so you can create a image also from here and use that image later on for spinning up new EC2 instances. Okay, so these are the small things which I just wanted to showcase. But let's do one thing, like how to access this particular EC2 instance, how to install something. Okay, but before that, let's go and explore this elastic IP address. Okay, so what is an elastic IP address? So most of us know we have a static IP addresses, or okay, let me just talk about the that behavior of a EC2 instance. So when you restart a EC2 instance, what will happen? So if you just note down this IP address, okay, it is this IP address. Okay, if I just restart this particular instance, reboot it, this IP address, it will just get changed. So what happens, for all stopped EC2 instances, the public IP address which is assigned, it is released to the public pool of a AWS, because these public IP addresses, they are very costly, correct? So when you do a reboot, so AWS will release this IP address and it will allocate a new IP address. So for every restart, you will have a new IP address. So if you install some web application, then how will you change this IP address? Because this IP address has to be defined in your DNS entry. So I will just show you. See, the IP address is now, hopefully it is changed. Okay, so this will keep on changing. So how to prevent these cases and use a static IP address? So for a static IP address, AWS has a concept of an elastic IP address. So you can just allocate an IP address and attach to an EC2 instance. So this IP address will remain same even if you restart this EC2 instance multiple times, or even if you shut it down and restart it tomorrow. Okay, so there are no price attached to this elastic address if it is in use. Okay, but what will happen if you delete an instance and you do not release this elastic IP address to the pool? In that case, you would be charged. Okay, so this is how it works. So let me just show how it works. So just go to the network and security, click IP elastic IP address. First you need to allocate an IP address. So this will get this IP address from the AWS pool. Okay, just let me allocate it. So now we have this IP address and we need to attach this IP address to our EC2 instance. So what you can do, you can just associate this IP address, choose your EC2 instance. So it is already running, so we will use this AWS and associate it. So if I just remember this 133 is the IP address, and if I just go to the instance and refresh it, so you will see this now instance has this public IP address. Okay, so now do a next activity. Let's try to install a web server on this particular server. Okay, so let's try to connect using the EC2 Instance Connect, which is the fastest and easiest way. Okay, now since this is a YAM server, this is a Ubuntu server, we can just run a Apache server, like just do a sudo apt install Apache 2. Okay, so basically this will download the Apache package and it will install that Apache server also. So let it install it. Okay, now how to connect a web server? It's very easy. So let's go this copy public IP address, port 80. So if you see, you have a Apache server up and running on this virtual machine. So you can do it as an exercise after the this session. So this after bootcamp, you just go and create a virtual machine EC2 instance using a free tier options. Install this Ubuntu. Install this Apache server, and you can also basically have your own web pages or website deployed on this one, this site also, this particular web server also. Okay, and if you want to access this on from some tool, you can use WinSCP or other kind of a tool to upload your files. Okay, so that is you can just explore it out. Okay, so this is how even if I just restart this instance, you will see this IP address is always retained, and even if I delete this instance, this IP address will remain into my pool until unless I explicitly release it to the AWS pool. But as long as this public IP address, this elastic IP address is attached to some EC2 instance, it is not chargeable. But if we delete an instance and we don't release this particular IP address back to the pool, we will be charged per day or per hourly. So be little careful about that. So that may increase your billing even in free tier account. Okay, so this is how we did. So first you need to allocate an IP address. Then you associate this IP address to a running instance, and how it works. So this is all we saw. Okay, so any questions till now? Hopefully you should be able to create a free tier account, and inside that you should be able to execute or bring up a EC2 instance, install your own software if we don't want to go for a Apache server, and set up all those required things. Okay, then there are certain advanced topics like CloudWatch. So probably what I will do, I will just go theoretical part, and let's see if we can cover some practical part. Okay, so there is a question from Arpana: where do we specify region while creation of an instance? Okay, that is a good question. So here, you have to define the region also. So if I choose Hong Kong as a region, so if I just create an instance, all those instances will be created in that particular region. Or there is also one option when we were configuring this EC2 instance to choose the region in AWS and thing. So let's see if we can do it little later. Okay, so so CloudWatch is nothing but it is a tool or service provided by AWS, where you can basically monitor your resources and their performance. So basically it provides a lot of matrices which you can use to monitor the resource, how they are working, what is the usage, those kind of things. And you can also add alarms on a critical events. So probably from AWS or DevOps perspective, these might not be very important, and probably you will not be required to use these tools or services, but still let's go and see how it works. Okay, so let me just enable a monitoring here. So if I just okay, sorry, in actions, if I just go, then there is a monitoring and troubleshooting, manage detailed monitoring. Okay, so you can enable a monitoring. So basic monitoring is free, which is basically every 5 seconds or 1 second it will just keep on monitoring. But if you want to have a more detailed thing, then that is a chargeable. But I think, see, the detailed monitoring is now enabled for this particular instance. Okay, this is how we can enable the detailed monitoring. This is what we got. Okay. Now we can also enable the alarms. So, but before that, let's see the monitoring detail. Okay, let's enable it first. So dashboard is somewhat, I don't like this new thing which they have created. It is very clumsy. So they just keep on updating it, but this particular version I don't like. Okay. Okay, so now we can enable, since we have enabled the monitoring, we can enable a CloudWatch alarms. Okay, so what we can do, so if you just go and see here, so these are the some of the matrices which are available. Okay, so just name alarm, like whenever the CPU utilization goes beyond 70, we will raise an alarm. Okay, so here you can just say average of for example CPU utilization is alarm when greater than 70%. Okay, for consecutive 3 times or for example 1. Okay, in period of 1 minute, or let's say for every for 3 minutes, this alarm is getting or this CPU utilization is more than 70% in a time period of 1 minute for 3 consecutive periods, then we should raise an alarm. Okay, so this alarm would be raised. Let's create this alarm. So this is how you can create the alarms. So if I just show you that monitoring which we have enabled, so you can now see our CPU utilization reached 40% at this particular time. Okay, and there are other monitoring details which you can see, network level monitoring details, what kind of a data was in and out, those kind of monitoring details, they are available. So you can just use these monitoring APIs or KPIs to raise or alarm. So we have set this alarm, but since CPU utilization will not go beyond 70%, so probably we will not see that alarm. But let's go through this slide deck. So this has a this captured this information beautifully. So what we created, so we can just create a alarm here, send a notification, so using other AWS services like SNS, or if you want to send a email, those kind of things. Okay, or if you want to take some corrective action, you can also take a corrective action. You can recover this image, stop this image, terminate this image, so depending upon how you want to handle that particular alarm. Okay, so this is how the particular thing you can watch. So for going to see it, you need to go to the CloudWatch, and there you can see the alarm detail. Okay, so let's it is not very much needed, so we will not go more into details. Okay, so this is an important topic, probably may not be directly relevant, but still you should know how it works. So auto scaling is a functionality which is provided by AWS, which helps you to dynamically scale up or scale down your EC2 instances. Okay, so the conditions that trigger these scaling can be different matrices which we have enabled in a CloudWatch. It could be like CPU or time of the day. For example, it could be an option like during the night there is no load, so you can just reduce your number of instances to, for example, 1. And in day you have all the employees working, so you can just create that in number of instances to, for example, 10. So that kind of a triggers or conditions can be configured. Or it can also be the CPU, like whenever CPU utilization reaches beyond 70%, you should spin up 1 or 2 instance. So those kind of things can be configured, or these things will happen automatically. No human intervention is required, so no person needs to do it every day. Okay, so pricing part, it doesn't cost anything. It is just like if you're using EC2 instance, 4 EC2 instances, then you will charge for 4. If you're using 5, then you will be charged for 5, and those kind of things will be the normal pricing. But for auto scaling as a service, there is a no price. Okay. Okay, so there are two parts to this. One is like creating your launch configuration, and your basically auto scaling group. So we will see it. Okay, so most of the configuration will remain same. Okay, so there is a question: is elastic block storage part of an instance, as it may get deleted when instance is terminated? Okay, so elastic block will not get deleted unless you choose an option to delete it. So you have an option so that you can retain that elastic block or that particular partition even if instance is deleted, so that you can attach it to other instance. So that option is also there. We just need to choose that option correctly. Okay, so let's see. First, we need to create a auto scaling group. Okay, so just name it test group. Okay, since we don't have a template, we need to create a template first. Okay. Let's name something. Okay. So this will ask like you are basically creating a configuration which will be used by auto scaling group to launch your instances. So you can just tell what instance it would be used for launching. Okay, let's say like this is our instance type. So it's basically like all the configurations or steps which we followed during a creation of EC2 instance, they are almost same here. So for example, this is the key pair for each and every instance which is created. So let's run it in a VPC. Okay, let's use a existing security group. I think this is what we used. Okay, storage volume we can add. So by default it is 8 GB. Okay, tag, let's don't use a tag. Network interface, let's same interface, default interface. If you want, you can request for a spot instance, or like these are the general options which we had chosen there. So you just create a launch group. So now you have a launch group. Okay, so now you just go back to auto scaling group. So now you can create an auto scaling group with this this particular template. Okay, so now go to next with the default. add her to launch template. VPC subnet we don't need. Let's use the let's default. Okay. So it might be possible, like sometimes this T2 micro might not be available in this particular region. So you need to let's choose if it is available here. Okay, so now it is available. Okay, enable group metrics and okay. So now here you can specify what should be your group size. So desired is like how many instances at a particular time. Default configurations you want to install like have a running. So let's say 2. Minimum capacity 1. So when auto scaling goes to the minimum, what should be the minimum instances? And maximum capacity is, for example, 10. So we have creating a security auto scaling group which can go up to 10 instances, and minimum is 1, but on average it will be 2 instances. So this is how you can configure, but generally if I say it should be like this one. Okay, or even these can be like this one also. So let's do it. And so these are just small configuration. Now you can review your configuration and create a auto scaling group. So if you just go and instances, so you can see here the security groups. Okay, so these are the security groups which are created. Okay, so this is how it works at a concept level. Okay, so Arpana has another question. Does Amazon charges per hour even when server instance is idle, or is charges based on a inbound traffic? So if you create an AWS instance, either is it idle or it is running, it doesn't matter. So if you have a active running server, it would be charged for that. And for inbound traffic, there is no charge. But if you send some data out, that might be a chargeable. But that is a very less charges. But your server, if it is in running state, even if it is an idle, it would be chargeable if you are using a non-free tier option. Okay, so this is what was the auto scaling group. Okay, did we miss something there? Okay. Okay, so fine. So I think we are just coming to the end of today's session. So what I would want, you can just create a well, this is a kind of a hands-on activity which you can try when you have a time. So what we would like to, you create a you configure and launch an EC2 instance, okay, using a free tier option. Add a storage of 20 GB. Create a security group of for SSH and HTTPS, not or maybe HTTP is also okay for the demonstration purpose. Assign an elastic IP address to this particular instance. Okay, then obviously list the state, instance state and other things. Obviously you will be having that public key or private key with you. Connect to this SSH, connect to this instance using SSH agent. Okay, and try to run some Linux commands to extract the IP address, time, and listing of file, etc. inside your virtual machine. And on the top of that, you can also install the Apache server and try to access this Apache server using the elastic IP address. Okay. I will share this hands-on activity on Slack channel also. Okay, so that's all I had for today. So maybe we can discuss the other scenarios. Let me